Hi, my name is Shane Zhang and I'm an English major at Yale University graduating 2025. This video is all about your personal statement and how to make it the absolute best part of your application. Tip 1 is something to remember. Most essays have already been written about, and you really want to avoid writing an essay that's already been done. So write about yourself and not just the things that you've done. A lot of people feel this urge to write about the first extracurricular that's on their application, but often these kinds of accomplishments are pretty self-explanatory. Every accomplishment and award comes with struggle, and that's why it's cool. But you don't always need to explain that struggle. In my opinion, those really impressive extracurriculars and awards that you put at the top of your application, those are the sorts of things that can also stand on their own the best. And they might not need an entire essay describing how great you are in that specific way. Remember that admissions officers read your extracurriculars first. So they already have an idea of what sorts of things you've done in high school, and they might not need you to flesh that out. And you also remember that you have 150 characters to describe each activity on your activities list, which is an okay amount of words. So by the time they get to your personal statement, they already know these things. So keep it fresh and keep your reader engaged by introducing new, fresh material in your personal statement. One small tip about your activities list is that you don't always need to describe exactly what your activity is. Admissions officers have read thousands of different ways to describe Model UN in 150 characters, so you might be better off using that space to describe something cool you did rather than just what the activity is itself. However, be careful with your esoteric acronyms and your niche extracurriculars, especially the local ones. They definitely are super important and should be mentioned. Admissions officers definitely know what FIRST Robotics is, but if it's a super local club, then admissions officers might not. In this case, you need to describe exactly what it is with that space. So back to your essay topic. I personally think it's really cool if you let your extracurriculars stand on their own and then fill in the rest of the parts of your personality using your personal statement. My personal statement, which I'm going to read in another video, is an example of this. So, tip 2, also regarding topics, is don't write about school or things that have to do with school. There are thousands of applicants to these universities, and the two things that every single applicant has in common and excels at is academics and extracurriculars. So, you don't want your personal statement, which is supposed to be the most unique part of your application, to be exactly the same as everyone else's. In fact, one accepted Stanford essay that I read was actually about how the applicant wasn't good at school, and that was unique enough to get her in. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule, as there are to all rules, but be very careful. Tip 3. The time for flexing your grades, extracurriculars, and test scores is not during your essays. It's during the beginning. So go into your essays confident that the officers know you extracurricularly and academically. And only write about these sorts of things if they're really important and you're absolutely sure that they're not coming through anywhere else. Remember also that you can ask your teacher recommenders to mention if you've done something really special academically, especially if they were an advisor or helped you out. Tip 4 is to be unique and avoid cliche, which has been said so many times, I'm sure that it's pretty much a cliche, but it's so important. There are topics that have just been written about thousands and thousands of times, and you just don't stand out as much if you write about them. Instead of writing about like Model UN or mock trial or debate for the millionth time, write about something funny at home or with friends or family or pretty much anything else. Your job outside school, just keep it from those topics. Sports essays are especially vulnerable to this. There's pretty much only two ways a sports essay can go. You either no matter what, you train really hard and you either miss the last goal and you learn from it, or you score and everyone cheers. And that's pretty much how it goes. So be very careful because these essays have been read. I've read them so many times and they've been written so many times. Another major one is the multicultural essay that gets done a lot. I'm biracial and it's important to me as well, but it's important to a lot of people in the world. This essay pretty much goes like, you find out at the end that you're not one culture, you're both cultures at the same time, or you're all, and you're not half of anything. It's really important and it's a true revelation and it's an important revelation, but a lot of people have had it before. Tip 5 is about victory essays, and it's a little bit more on cliches. So victory essays in general are often bad, where it's just you describing your struggle towards a victory that you've already described elsewhere in your application. This kind of ties together a lot of things I've already said. Remember to let some things stand on their own. You want to talk about personality in your essays, not awards. Tip 6 is the two main kinds of college essay structures, which I got from the college essay guy on the internet, who's fantastic, which are montage and narrative. Personally, I see more potential in the narrative style, just because you can have a continuous flowing thing and it's more traditional, but I don't mean a narrative arc. It's not an action sequence. I mean just a continuous story. But montage is a really, really fantastic way of A, saying a lot of different things that are loosely connected, that you loosely connect for them, but B, keeping your reader's attention, which is something I'll come back to in tutoring and throughout this video. A really good montage tip is to use a unique structure and connect your content to that structure. So some examples of this that I've seen are different streets and buildings in a writer's life that they connected different ideas to, the different sections of a political pamphlet, pretty much anything that is fun and engaging for the reader to read about. If you could do astrological signs or like different building materials that the big bad wolf blew down, just anything to keep people engaged. Tip 7 is don't exaggerate or reframe just for a better story. And I don't just say this for moral and ethical reasons. It also just makes for worse essays. I'm going to be entirely honest and say that my original essay idea wasn't entirely true. The topic was the same as the essay I'm going to read you in another video, but the way I framed it was very different. They're both about walking, but in my first drafts, I talked about walking through LA because of the fact that I love city planning and city life and how that all connects to my application as an urban studies major, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I did hours and hours of research on city planning and city life to make it true, but the ultimate essay that I ended up with was clunky and weird and tried to fit too much stuff in. When I sat down and just made it entirely truthful, which is that I walked 2-hour walks all the time because walking is fun, it made the entire thing much more genuine and just a better essay. Number 8 is about sad essays. Sad essays, especially personal statements, is something to be careful about. Sad art is one of the easiest ways to influence your audience emotions. You definitely know this if you've ever been to a spoken word performance or if you've ever read the kind of college essays that are published by places like the New Yorker. So a lot of college applicants feel the need to write sad essays about big traumas. And obviously these events are super, super important. However, I'd personally recommend against it in your personal statement just because it gets done so much. And every year, like these beautiful, beautiful tragic essays are written and it's a lot to compete with. However, it's super important that these sorts of things get said. So that's why we have an additional information section on the Common App, which admissions officers read. And also, my personal recommendation is if you need to fit it into your essays, to put it in your supplemental essays. What this means is that the admissions officer gets an entire picture of you from your extracurriculars and activities list to your personal statement, which is about something else that has an entire picture of you. And then they learn more about you in other ways, which means that your application is not going to be just entirely defined by the trauma that you write about in your personal statement. Tip 9 is that you are not the next Jane Austen, and that's totally okay. Obviously, craft is super important and has to be at a certain level in order to keep your reader engaged and the essay flowing. However, when your regional admissions officer presents your application to the committee, they're not going to be talking about the literary devices that you used in your essay. They're going to talk mostly about content and the vibe that you gave off. So in my personal experience and opinion, most college essays, the craft is not that great. However, that's totally fine. Do not get hung up on writing perfect sentence, A, because you probably won't, and B, because the most important thing is that you pick a strong, exciting topic for your essay and clearly communicate what you want to. What this also means is to not get discouraged by the incredible personal statements that you can read out there on the internet. Read them once as inspiration, and pretty much I would recommend to just put them down and not look at them again. These essays that I'm talking about are like R.P. Park, the punk rock philosopher, the Costco essay, of course. These are very helpful to read, but I recommend not looking at them too much and taking them just as inspiration. On that same note, don't take everything that you read and hear online too seriously, and that includes this video. Some of the essays that I mentioned break rules that I said in this video in huge ways. I'm also pretty sure that the punk rock philosopher essay, which is my favorite essay of all time, was not actually written by a real student. I'm giving these tips because I think they are best, but they're not the only way. Best of luck, and I'll see you in the next video.